Kim, would you like me to share my screen or you got it?
I think I can do at least that, hopefully.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I've been very excited about this. I actually have been seeing patients this morning, which has been patients, athletes this morning, and in several of them we talked about this. So this is very timely for sure. So our talk today, and I would love for all of us in the panel to be able to introduce ourselves. We have our names and pictures up on our slide deck, but I would love to go through and introduce our panel. Um, I am a physician, so I'm CEO of Onrise. I'm a physician, a psychiatrist by training, and we have started Onrise after seeing a huge need for all the things we're talking about now, right? For the reasons Athlete for Hope exists, to actually be the treatment arm. So we are very happy to combine the treatment pieces and practical pieces of things that we do to try to keep athletes better with the incredible educational programming that you guys are doing at Athletes for Help. And so I guess I'll pass over to Derrick.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Derrick Furlow, Jr. here, played football and the Chief Athletics Officer of Onrise. The mission was relevant to me when it came down to the transition of life after sports and seeing a lot of my peers and teammates struggle. So that's what made me dive in to create books and guides to help athletes transition along down that journey. Was fortunate enough to cross paths with Kim and Tasha, and that's where the birth of Onrise created to help athlete mental health, being able to provide care and support on different levels in a way that was never done before. So excited for today and excited for each and every one of you that's on here with us. I'm going to throw it over to you, Tasha.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tasha. I've been with OnRise for a very long time now, and um, OG, yeah. And really, like my involvement from the start was a lot of what you all have been through too. What we're realizing is just such a common experience that is not as easy as everybody thinks. Just being a college athlete or going to be a professional athlete. My personal story, just my family not being from here, being from England, trying to go and play collegiately, getting really tough surgeries throughout college, and the recruiting process going into college, and then also just like educationally throughout college, trying to figure out like, what is this path? What is college sports? How do I navigate this? Please, somebody help me. So really just using a lot of that experience to really inform what we do here at OnRise, supporting current athletes and making sure that we're providing amazing resources like this with Athletes for Hope. So excited to be here, share some more about my experience. I'm not sure if I said it, but I played soccer. Over to Kayla.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Tasha. Excited to be here and talk about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart as far as recovery is concerned, how it's been instrumental, not only during my time where I played volleyball at the University of Tennessee. I played professionally and also coached, and I transitioned into the endurance running world and taking the tools and learnings from being a collegiate athlete and also trying to navigate life during the time that I was an athlete. I went through some grief, some transitional things, as Derrick mentioned, and being here as an athlete mental health specialist on Rise now, I think two or 3 years. I don't know. Time is flying and moving has been super rewarding, not only for me, but just to work with the athletes and provide a space to be and have some support during a time that I wish I had when I was an athlete. So really excited to be here and part of the conversation. And Kendra, I'll pass it to you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. My name is Kendra Coleman, and I am the Athletes for Hope piece here. I work for Athletes for Hope. I am the CHAMPS program manager. CHAMPS is a really great program where we take elite, Olympic, Paralympic, professional athletes, and we're able to pair them with schools across the country. Right now, we have over 900 schools where we bring athletes in and we focus on mental health and leadership skills. So I did it as an athlete, and there's no better job that I could do as a professional right now. I ran track and field for many years. I went to the University of Texas, Hookham, and I decided to go pro, and I kind of went out on a limb. I didn't have a sponsor. I was kind of like just let's see where it goes. And 9 years later, I ended up going to 3 Olympic trials. So very, very happy to be here. I'm retired now, but I also coach now. So it's really exciting. And one last piece of track and field, I am the USATF Athletes Commission Vice Chair. And basically what we do is we just lift our athlete bodies' voices up. We are the commission and the committee who really helps bring voice to our national governing body. So happy to be here. Can't wait to dive in on this topic. It's super important, as I tell my athletes every day. So glad to be here. And by the way, I'm a super fan of OnRise. I think I can just say for all the athletes that have been impacted by this company, you guys are the change. You are making a difference. So I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Awesome. Love that.
We got Lex.
We got Lex. Mina, can we get Lex's camera turned on? I think she was not added to the thing, so I turned her camera off. So a little technical difficulty there. There we go. There we go.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, can y'all hear me though?
We can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah, it's not letting me right now. So whatever that gets figured out, cool, no problem. My name is Alexis Hornbuckle. Happy to see everyone. Kendra, pleasure to meet you. And which is, geez, like that resume, impressive. But so my story is former NCAA athlete, basketball, Division I Lady Ball under Coach Pat Summitt. 2-time championships and champion in NCAA, and then 6 years in the WNBA, 2 years. There it is, guys. Hold on, I'm about to come in strong. All right, so good to see everybody. Thank you. 6 years WNBA, 2 championships there. Was number 4 overall draft pick. So my journey as an athlete was kind of one of those where it was like I was highly recruited at a very young age. Like 12 is when it started. And I was just blessed to be able to follow my dreams and decide on the school and be able to actually, live out those dreams. That was a blessing. Many challenges came with those. Great times and great things happened, but there was a lot of challenges. And I wish I would have had what we offer here at OnRise, back then. These are conversations that we've had every day. So just happy to be a part of it on a broader spectrum.
I think that's everyone. Back to you, Kim. I think you're muted.
Okay, we'll dive in. Our team's put together a deck. We're going to do some just kind of basic overview, and then we're going to have the most important part, which we're going to talk about the science, and everybody tells you to rest and recover, but nobody tells you how to really do it practically when you got 5 minutes between class or you get home and you're really exhausted. It sounds great and it looks really great. I love Kayla on Instagram getting up with her things on, looking tired. It makes me feel human. It's like the best part of my day when I'll check her Instagram and be like, okay, she tired? How's she doing this morning? So I love Kayla's already gives us good practical tips of how to rest and recover right now. It's very valuable content. So that's where we're going to start. Let me share my screen with you guys and pop over to this. All right, can you guys see that okay? And is it nice and big and you're not looking at other?
You've done great.
Acting part? Okay.
Crushing.
So tools to refuel, the team came up with this. Actually, Derrick and Tash came up with this. I just got like naysaying power, which is not always helpful, but I get to wrinkle the nose. But I do like what they came up with, tools to refuel. What was your other one, Derrick? Grind, and we had a lot of good ones. Derrick came up with a lot of good ones. But we settled on tools to refuel the mental and physical recovery your game needs. This is the panel, and everybody on the panel, we will send this out afterwards. So if you want anybody's name here and want to contact anybody individually, you're certainly welcome to. Certainly welcome to through OnRise. It's also on our website as well. Okay, so let's start at the, I got to get this bar out of here so I can see. Okay. The hustle culture and recovery dichotomy. That's a mouthful, and it is also a brainful, right? So I always talk about brainfuls. Our brains are filled up with so much stuff right now that really distilling down what can actually be done in the day-to-day hustle of an athlete is really tricky. My son's a current college athlete, texted me at 6:15 on the way to the gym and has probably 5-minute downtime till 11 o'clock tonight. So rest and recovery sounds great, but not a lot of us have actually the time to do what we need to do. So, but the part of science behind this that we know is that it is really a strategic part of our training process. It's not downtime. It's not negative time. It's not doing nothing. It's an active process of recovery that is aiding in our performance athletically, physically, mentally, in all areas of our life, both on and off the field. So that's what we're going to talk about, how intentional, we're going to talk really about intentional rest and recovery are as vital as the training itself. And I really do believe that. The more and more I do this and see what happens to athletes who do not slow down, I can say that as is true. So we'll talk about physiology is really the fancy word for what chemically is happening in your body during different activities. So when we talk about balance, your body already knows that you need to rest, right? So it tells us things. Everybody knows, right? Your calves hurt, you can barely walk, you're exhausted, you're not sleeping well. There's all kinds of things your body's like saying, my balance is off. So if you look at the first, homeostasis means balance. And so if you have a stressor and you've got a performance and you're at homeostasis, and then you add a stressor, right? And then you add recovery, and then it gets you to a new level of performance but see that alarm phase and that recovery phase. If you don't have that recovery phase, you're not going up to that new level of homeostasis without it, right? And that is, this is not a new graph. This graph's been around for a long time. I think that our athletic groups and athletic organizations don't always follow this the way they should. I think people are trying to in a different way now that things are changing, but certainly traditionally, certainly when I was an athlete, this did not happen. And I've seen it happen more and more in the last little while, because I think people are really starting to understand that this new homeostasis really means an elevated performance. So this slide just says the impact of rest on athletic performance. We know that muscle recovery and strength, that's the most obvious thing that happens, that your muscles don't repair without that. That's the basis. You guys all know that as athletes. Energy restoration, energy is glycogen, which is the vehicle for energy, is restored for future performance that if we're not resting and recovering, we don't have. And then this is a really interesting piece that I think all of you should dive into separately. Your brain and body really do skill consolidation. So learning and refining motor skills happen during your rest periods, not during your practice. So and honestly, I'd not spent a whole lot of time on that before the last couple of years, but when you're practicing in reps and reps and reps, the time that those reps really like set in, like a Jello mold setting or cookies, out of the oven, they rest, and that's when it consolidates all together. I thought that was pretty fascinating personally. I still think it's fascinating.
Very.
Thank you, Derrick. So the mental health benefits, we also know the mental health benefits of rest, stress reduction, lowers cortisol levels. Cortisol is just one general representation of the thousands and thousands of chemicals going through our body that replenish when you rest and recover. It helps your mood for more emotional regulation and resilience, and then also your cognitive function, which is something we don't really think of during athletic performance, how important your cognitive function, your processing speed, all of those things. Without rest, it's like you're underwater. So you really have to put this in to be able to be alert in the way that you want to be on game day. So this is a stress. I like this a lot. The stress sweet spot. It's hard to say fast. to going from I'm so bored, and I imagine Tasha saying this, I'm so bored, I'm rocking it. She's, you know, I'm rocking it. Then
I was
starting
about to say, when I saw this graph, it
it's
resonated
so
with me
you.
so hard.
It's so Tasha. So we're going to use this at work too.
I'm rocking it, and now I'm
rest.
freaking out.
Now I'm freaking out. Now I'm totally crashed and burned, and I can't do anything.
Oh, so true.
Okay, so we're going to also get in today the role. This is more of an outline for the discussions we're going to have with our athletes. The role of sleep in recovery, sleep cycles, right? We're not sleeping well. We're not getting the restorative sleep. There's so many different types of sleep, but restorative sleep, you may say, oh, I was in the bed for 6 or 7 hours, but you're not getting the restorative sleep you need. It's been fascinating seeing wearables coming out like Whoop that really talk about sleep quality, that really help you dial into that. I think that's been one of the most revolutionary things for athletes to come out to really see, oh, I'm not recovering the way I should be. I'm really not getting good restorative sleep the way I should. And also, these are the things that affect that. You know, I'm drinking alcohol before bed, or I'm, you know, drinking an energy drink at 6 o'clock, or I'm not really eating carbs in the evening, right? That can decrease your sleep as well. Again, the whole idea of physical repair and memory consolidation. So you consolidate memories when you sleep. You consolidate memories when you experience REM sleep. So if you are trying to consolidate practice and or game time decisions and things that you have done, and you are doing that, you're doing that during REM sleep to maximize it. So if you're not getting enough REM sleep, why are we practicing, right? Because you may or may not remember it in a game time decision. Your body is not going to remember to move that way when you need to move that way or do that, or you're not going to process something quick enough. You're not making it a memory, which is how you become such a good athlete, because you're not really thinking, right? That's the whole basis of flow state. It's you've got all these consolidated body and mind memories of, oh, I've been in this situation before. I've got this, right? But that doesn't happen without REM sleep. Another very, very cool thing. And then obviously restorative effects of sleep are huge. There's another nice little graph you can put yourself at the top with poor sleep, and physical, emotional, and mental issues with having poor sleep. You know, obviously physical things are huge, right? You see all kinds of metabolic problems. I'll use wrestlers as a good example of very, very tight weight requirements. I work with a good number of wrestlers that they're not sleeping well. They cannot maintain their weight because their metabolic system is going haywire and not allowing them to stay where they need to be, because it's like something must be going on. You're not sleeping well. Like, what's happening in your life? Something, you know, so I can't really let go of this extra weight that you might need to survive down the road. You know, all of our body is based on survival. And so if we think about it that way, it helps with this piece. Obviously the emotional piece of it is just very, very hard to have emotional exhaustion due to poor sleep and then function the way we need to on a regular basis. And then emotional obviously is different than mental and cognitive as well. And then you have all of those issues: multitasking, staying alert, indecision, poor concentration. All of that is bad in athletics, right? Any one of those things doesn't work when you're in a competition. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly. I'm just throwing out these basic concepts. This is why this is not going in depth, because we're going to go in depth with our athletes. So there's active versus passive recovery. So you can be resting. You can have a rest day where you do nothing. And then you can have a rest day where you're doing yoga, you're doing light jogging. Kayla can talk about this in the context of distance running, of having, you know, a light 20-minute jaunt is a rest day versus full rest. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques, and nutrition and hydration. And so we're going to get into all of those things as well. Okay, so this is the fun part. And I am going to, I'm going to run through. And Tash, do you mind cueing the questions? Because I'm going to run through and then stop sharing so everybody can see each other's face and really interact.
Yeah.
But this is the fun part. This is the practical. There's Kayla and Lex's. Oh, we gotta get Lex's face up here. This is right up there. These are the practical tips, like the real tips. Like, what would y'all all tell my kid who's stopping at the gas station to get 2 energy drinks before a game or whatever, right? Like, what's the real, where the rubber meets the road and you are a current athlete and all this stuff sounds really awesome. What are the practical tips? So I'm going to stop sharing, and then Tash, I would love you to cue kind of questions up from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know that, yeah, I know that Lex does have to jump at 11:30. So Lex, if you want to kick us off on like things that resonated with you right away, stuff you wanted to share, and jump into that.
Well, first, one thing that resonated is I was that person, an athlete that was drinking the energy drinks before practice.
Yeah.
But if I would have known then, right, the cliche, what I know now, I definitely would not have been doing that. I would have been, my nutrition would have been a whole lot better. I would have been more intentional about it, right? Like what I'm eating, what I'm snacking on. So it's a kind of like a misconception that if you're eating clean or if you're eating healthy, or that word that America likes to use, if you're dieting, like you can't snack, right? No, it's what you're snacking on, it's what you're putting in your body, how often, how much. And then even just breaking it down into like later I got into juicing, just like little things that, okay, instead of going to go get a processed juice or soda from somewhere, like look into, if you don't want to make it yourself, juice it yourself, other options to go buy it, right? And get that fix, get that sugar craving, right? But with the good sugars. And then go through your day intentional as far as, do you have rehab? Do you need to go to the training room, or is it something you can do on your own? Like you say, yoga, I wasn't big on yoga, but what I was big on, I'll go take walks, I'll go stretch, I'll go put up shots, but not like off the dribble shots. It may be more spot shooting, just to feel like my body and mind, like we're doing something, we're very active, but also not trying to screw up my own knees that I already had in college, right? So just being very intentional about what I put in my body, and the time that I dedicate to, like that active recovery versus a full recovery, or adding in that meditation, or even just sometimes that solitude is necessary as well, right? Like it's okay not to hang out with all of your teammates. It's okay not to go to this party. It's okay not to go to this kickback or cook. We used to call them kickbacks, cookout. So but all of that is okay in order to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have school. You're still a student athlete. You still have your school, your tutoring, your practices, and your games. So just being more intentional on what you put in your body and the time that you're actually spending doing this on your recovery days.
Agreed. Derrick, I know too, 11:30, you got to maybe head out of here. And I know as soon as Lex said juicing, your face perked up. So talk juicing with us, talk about your active rest and recovery.
Well, I was late to the game on the juicing part. That's in post-athletic life, but I love it. But one of the things that stood out to me when Kim went through the education on the sleep part, for one, like you hear about it, but you don't know the detail that you just shared, and that little bit of detail that you went in. It was like, because freshman year,
crazy hard.
I came into school and we come in the summertime and we got these 6 a.m. workouts, and I would lay down at 11. And I would feel like I laid there until 5:30, and then I would finally doze off at 5:45, and then I got to wake up at 6. And that happened my first 2 years. I'm like, someone got to give, because this is not working. So that whole idea of actually resting when you're in the bed, I had a moment of having to figure this out. So I got a new memory foam mattress, tried all these things. I think that kind of helped. But the last thing I think that just I realized that helped me was to get physically exhausted, where my body just pretty much made me go to sleep, like it shut me down. So I think it was kind of like a reset. It was intentional, but I wasn't sure if it was going to work. And we just stayed up pretty much 24 hours. And I did what the guys normally do, which I don't do, is just go out with them and then come straight from going out to the workout. So a whole 24 hours, bad idea, but it worked. It reset me. I was able to rest. I was so tired. And then that was my last problem, actually getting
That is
REM
the
sleep.
ultimate practical tip for resetting. How do you do this in college in real time?
Exhaustion, literally exhaustion. So that was probably my biggest thing that I learned. Like I could actually rest if I am physically exhausted. And it was fascinating. I don't know, it made me do more of the workout harder. And more of the training we did harder. The recovery piece, as far as in the training room, I don't think I used it as much as if I wasn't injured, because most of the time it was looked at, if you're in the training room, you're injured versus active recovery. So I did enjoy stretching, because flexibility and having good hips or bad hips as a DB is a thing. So that part I enjoyed. I still do that today. Some active. I get yoga on, not actually participate in the yoga. I just pay them to stretch me. I appreciate trainers. I didn't realize how the blessing of a trainer in stretching you really good now that you actually got to go pay for that.
Yes.
So those are the things I learned now that I saw then, but now I definitely appreciate them. So I would just encourage everyone, you got to figure out what works for you because it's going to look different. And the faster you can figure that out, probably the better. Because I was late to the party on a couple of these things. So those things definitely stood out when you talked about the REM sleep and remembering stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you guys are, so those are like the ultimate tips, right? Lex brought up something that's super interesting, experiencing your team sport in solitude and peace in a different way than the way, I mean, I've never thought of that, Lex. That's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about what that did for your rest and recovery?
Yeah, it is interesting because it's a team sport. You're especially on the collegiate level, right? Pro level is a little bit different, but at the collegiate level, you are around each other a lot, like all the time. This is your new family, right? It doesn't matter what team sport you play, like you're there. You see each other even on off days sometimes, right? So how do I really buy into me, right? So before I even tapped into really like mental health, what is it? I didn't even know that I was dealing with, anxiety battles, depression battles, ADHD. Like I didn't know that at all. Didn't tap into that. So and D'Lo and Kayla can attest to this. Like I'm out all night, like. But then I'm still up and I'm still moving and I'm still doing things the whole day and I'm still going to go support this sport and I'm still going to go over here to this, you know what I mean? And I'm still studying sometimes and I'm still going to class most times. Uh, you know what I mean? Because if we didn't, Pat didn't play that, we're not playing. But it was like an aha moment. I think around my junior year after I broke my wrist and towards the end of my sophomore year. And it was just like, I don't want to hear nobody's voice. I don't want to see anyone's face. And I'm okay with that. Like, I don't feel obligated to have to go to my teammates' events, cookout, movie night. I don't have to do these things. You know why? Because number one, you have to know who you are, right? I am a great teammate. I communicate, right? I help others, things like that. Know who you are so you're not coming off as just distant or disrespectful in any way. It's just like I'm choosing me and I have to respect self first, right? In order to even pour out to others. And that's in the classroom, that's in the court, that's in church. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're not being poured into, you cannot pour out after a certain extent. So that piece, that solitude piece was just like, I need to be. What's funny is I used to make fun of my teammates. They would be like, nah, I'm just gonna chill today. Like, I don't want to be around nobody. And I'd be like, what you mean? You so antisocial? No, baby, they was choosing mental wellness, mindfulness, that everything that we hear, they were privy to that before sooner than I was. But when I found it, Kim, it was just an amazing piece to the puzzle. And I took rest in knowing that this is a necessity for me to be able to operate at a high level in everything else in my life.
I do see in work, individual work at the psychiatric level with, we're kind of that's my realm in our company, is that a lot of times people confuse wanting to be done with their sport and more all of those other things, lack of rest and recovery. And then when you go back to that saying, no, I love my sport. I love playing basketball. I just don't like all of this other stuff. So that's really interesting. That's super helpful to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you got to go.
Yeah, I think one piece that really resonated with me that Lex was talking about too is just like finding yourself and knowing yourself, right? So like my freshman year, I'm trying to fit into this place that like everybody had been to a boarding school. I just thought that was in movies. Like I didn't know that was a real thing. Like I got there, felt very out of place, like loved it, but felt out of place. And like I had to realize like who I was within that space. And that probably didn't come till late sophomore, junior year, where all these people are going out and being like, I'm pulling all nighters. I'm studying all night before my final, right? That was such a thing, all nighters before a final. And I had to really sit down with myself and be like, no, I love sleep. I need my sleep. Like this might be cute in this hustle culture for y'all about like grinding, staying up all night, pulling an all-nighter, getting ready for this final, but like I'm a sleeper and I need my sleep, right? So like being real with myself in those moments too took some introspection, but like once I got there, it was very helpful. I know Kendra and Kayla, y'all have been on mute over there, so I'm gonna throw it over to you all.
Yeah, it can happen. I think especially, thinking about college for me, it was the first time that I was in control of my time, but not really because my coaches also
Mhm.
scheduled my time. So feeling like there are so many responsibilities to show up for, even taking into consideration of where am I going to find room to eat, let alone to sleep and rest, was the first time I had to figure it out. And as far as performance is concerned, when we're young, energy feels limitless. We can do all the things, we can eat whatever, we can pull all nighters, and we can still show up. But I really think there's something to take into consideration around, okay, if you're able to perform well with the gas tank on a quarter, imagine how not only will you can perform, but how much better you will feel if you at least get up to 75%. And the phrase that I often use now when it comes to whether it's the things I'm literally eating or just the things I'm ingesting on social media or just my day to day is I consider my body a high performing machine, right? Like it is this vehicle through which I can do many things, which requires diesel gas, right? You think about designer cars, they require diesel gas. You wouldn't put 87 octane in a diesel tank because it would destroy the entire engine. And so when that flip switched for me in considering how I approach my body and my care, and especially rest, and then rewriting a lot of the narratives around rest, not as not doing or not showing up or not performing, it really helped me lean in, and especially what Tasha was saying, understand that like I'm a person that requires rest unapologetically, and I love it. And I'm a better human, not only for other people and my teammates, but also for myself when I take that time to disconnect from phones, right? Like we are constantly bombarded with notifications and information. And even though, yeah, maybe you're laying on your couch and you're laying in bed and you're physically laying down and you're resting in that way, but the constant bombardment, we are not designed to actually process, and it activates us at all times. So figuring out what pockets of your day you can reclaim for yourself, either to be in solitude or put the phone down, or even just go for a walk and be with yourself and listen to some music that helps keep you a little bit more less activated state.
Kayla, I want to jump in real quick after what you said. We talk about memory consolidation, and since was prepping for this, and then I went down a total rabbit hole about REM sleep and memory consolidation, there is a thing where people are trying to study, if you were on your phone before bed, what memories are you consolidating? Are you consolidating muscle and physical lessons you've learned, like physical and mental lessons you've learned in practice? Or are you consolidating all of these things that you've seen that our body was never designed to do, right? We were not designed to have full experience, right? So they're talking about how you're almost like being on your phone right before bed at times can almost negate practice, which is crazy. So I hope we get some good data on that too, right?
Yeah, I think I can resonate with everyone. When I first went to college, I was just like totally out of my comfort zone. I was trying to fit in, but as everyone has said, it's like you have to find your voice. And that was really hard for me. I had a roommate who literally was the opposite. She was a night owl and I wanted to sleep. We had 6 a.m. waits and she'd come in at all hours. And I'm just like, this is terrible. So we shared like a room and our beds were on opposite sides. And so at one point, I think it was maybe like late in the year, I had put up with it for too long, and I asked the coach, like, please find me a new roommate. But I had to show that I was dedicated. I think with collegiate athletes, it's like, okay, you kind of like almost self-separate. There's a group of athletes who want to get better, who are focused, who are maybe on the traveling squad, and there's some athletes who maybe don't get it, till their senior year. And or they don't get it at all ever. So I think for me, it was being like, okay, I'm not going to waste my time. I need to be intentional. So what can I do for myself? And that was really getting sleep, showing up to weights on time, like eating the right things. And I had to just separate and follow and be with those people who were already on the right path. And so for me, I like got rid of that roommate. I was able to get my own dorm and I was so excited. And so, yeah, I think finding a routine for sleep was like crucial for my success in my first year because I was just adjusting to the workouts. The jump from high school workouts to college workouts is intense, and you don't even realize it, but you're doing so much more in the weight room, on the track. I mean, your workouts just intensify. So my recovery had to intensify as well. So yeah, that was one of my big things was sleep. And I had to learn the hard way, had to get rid of a roommate, but I think it was worth it. We're still friends, by the way.
I love that.
You just brought up some, Kendra, that again is super interesting. So you think about your workload increasing. So if rest is static, right? And you go from high school, say you're like, you have this balance, rest, whatever, and you probably still don't, because if you're going to run at Texas, you're already kind of like here, right? So then you're like, you throw your workload through the roof, and it takes you, some athletes, up to 2 years, right? You guys have all mentioned junior year, late sophomore, junior year. To elevate that in the same ratio. And that, I think, is, I see that every day. It doesn't matter what level of professional athletes, for all of you guys that care for our professional athletes that we care for, there's a big misconception about that too. True of all of us in every area of life. But that really helped me just to think about, okay, we got to keep the ratio the same, and know that our ratio that we've set in high school before we go to college is not good. So we got to reset that and then keep it that way as you increase your workload. That was interesting.
So I think that we all talked about, like, okay, in hindsight, maybe I would have done this, or Kendra would like set the boundary right away her freshman year. But like, how do we set those boundaries, especially like in college? Maybe we've been dealt an iffy set of cards, whether it's the roommate we were given, like whatever that might be. How have you all seen, how you set boundaries, how you've been successful in that, and like the best way to communicate some of those things going about setting some of those boundaries?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a journey to find my voice. I was naturally a timid kid, so it was always hard for me to be like, oh, I need to ask my coach this, like, or I need to say this. So finding your voice is so important as an athlete, especially in the collegiate space. Like, you are your own advocate, especially in the professional space. It's even more so. You don't have those people around you to say, hey, you need to stand up for yourself. So I think for me, it was just part of the process of the learning curve. There were times where I was like, I cannot practice today because I am depleted. And everyone's schedule is different. Like, I might have a final and the person next to me might not, but we still have repeat 400s together. So I still had to study. So yeah, I think communicating with your coach, that was one thing that I found really helpful, because I was like, look, I have to study, I have to work, I have to, whatever it was that I needed to do. I did a lot of internships. I was like, I just need this time, and I promise you I will make it up at the park later. I'll send you a video, a picture, whatever you need proof. So just being communicative with them. And then as I, went into the professional space, it was even more important for me, because it changes, right? Because you take more of accountability. But I still hire a coach. So my coach was still responsible for my workouts. And there were times where even when I showed up to the track and she saw me jog and she's like, okay, no, we're changing the workout. Like, you look terrible. And I'm like, yeah, I had a crazy night last night. I stayed up late. And so with track and field and running, for me, it was really like listening to your body, finding out what works for you, and knowing that we write our workouts in pencil. At any point, we can switch it. There's never a Sharpie, there's never a pen, because you show up and you're not looking good, you can get hurt. So that was the most important thing.
Right.
Sleep translates to like injury. So that was part of learning curve for me. I didn't realize that when I was in high school, but as I went through my collegiate years and then professional years, that was just like a no-brainer. It was second nature. Let's see how this warm-up feels. If it feels good, we're doing it. If not, we're not. Having that boundary was super important.
Yeah. I feel like for, an individual, I mean, it is a team sport, right? But like a little bit more of an individual sport, being able to advocate for that and for yourself is so important. And finding that voice, like you said, is huge. Kayla, how would you take that versus like on a team sport with volleyball? If you were just like, nah, I'm good today.
Yeah, I have to
How,
say, Kendra, you sound like you were very fortunate to have an understanding coach, who could listen to and was receptive to what you needed. Obviously, I mean, not that the demands of volleyball aren't like track and field, but track and field is a very, especially spinners, very, very demanding. And like you said, overuse, exhaustion can lead to injury at a higher rate. I think for volleyball in particular, having a relationship with the coach, because for me, if I'm exhausted and I was a person on my team, my nickname was Workhorse, I could just go, go, go until no end. And I think a lot of that was because of I spent a lot of time in the training room with someone that wasn't injured until later in my career. And I just understood the importance of, okay, if I'm going to, go pedal to the metal, it's even more important to recover harder. And a phrase that I still use to this very day is recover harder than you train, right? Like you can only push your body at which you've recovered. But we would have conversations, me with my coach saying like, hey, like I'm feeling pretty fatigued today. Maybe we don't scrimmage today. We do ball handling instead, excuse me. So developing that relationship with your coach, if it's there, to make adjustments based off of the needs of the team was really helpful. And I think, Kendra, one thing that you said that definitely resonated with me is just developing more body awareness. I think as young athletes, as collegiate athletes, as a female athlete, we don't have that connection because our workouts are written in pencil, but they're also like mandatory. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least for volleyball.
They're not
So
written
it's like
in pencil.
yeah. It's like we have to be there. We can make some adjustments, but we're still going to be here, and it's going to be at 100%. And I think understanding and taking moments to, take an inventory check-in, whether it's using a wearable or a device that can give you your recovery score. I know at least volleyball at Tennessee specifically was using Whoop at one point in time to inform their training, which I think is really helpful for coaches to see because they have these young athletes who are full of energy, who are showing up, who look like they got 8 hours of sleep, who really went to sleep 15 minutes ago and just woke up, who can rock and roll and keep it going. It's important to have all those feedback points, not only for the coaching staff, but also the athletes themselves and all of you to learn what you need and what feels optimal, what feels suboptimal, but it just takes some practice of tuning in and making notes to make those changes.
Okay. So that's interesting. So we have technology now that is setting boundaries for our current athletes, which is amazing. So my son's coach, he plays soccer. Men typically, I don't know if this is true, they don't talk about being tired, or even now, like they don't bring it up. They don't set boundaries for themselves. They're terrible at it. He'll call me and he'll say, I just ran another 5 miles. I was already exhausted. I'm like, oh, did we discuss that? No, I'm not going to say anything, right? So now the data with Whoop and their strain, well, you had a 37 strain or whatever, like ridiculously high strain is. The coaching staff and the athletic department or the trainers are now saying, oh, you cannot do that to him in practice, but it's taking him out of it, which I think is beautiful. That's a really interesting bypart of technology that I've noticed even the last, 10 years. That's been super helpful.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kayla.
No, I was going to say, I think there's such an important part of tech that we now have access to that I think protects a lot of athletes and their careers past collegiate and into their everyday lives. And I think when we're thinking about sleep and recovery, like, again, yes, you're young, you feel energized, you can do all the things and jump into all the drills and run all the miles, but your career as an athlete ends at some point in time. And I think it's important to think about now, maybe it's not top of mind, thinking about health span and lifespan and longevity, but if you want your body to feel good as you age and you want to feel like you can continue to maybe do your sport at another level as you age, taking care of yourself now really matters, and using different wearables or just collecting insights can be a way to do that for sure.
Yeah. I think I'll just come off what you're saying here, Kayla. As somebody who didn't play at a D1 school, right? So I played D3, and we definitely did not have that technology of the wearables when I was playing. I know you didn't either, Kayla, but like when I was playing, we didn't have that. But also, I'm not completely sure my school still has that now, right? Like maybe they're getting there, but like money is such a thing, and budgets and athletic departments and stuff too. So like from my experience, I would just share as well, like finding that voice, that communication, being able to speak up for yourself, especially as a woman, is hard. And I had a lot of pain going through college. I had compartment syndrome in both of my calves. I think your calves are supposed to sit somewhere from like 30 to 45, and my front right compartment was sitting at 117. So like I was in excruciating pain and just like not sticking up for myself. And I think the hardest part too of like that hustle culture we were talking about is like when coaches say something like, specifically, we were in Costa Rica. We've been doing sprints on this like asphalt. It's fine. That felt fine on my legs. I mean, not great. And the coach like gave us a day off and said, instead, y'all are going to go on a 2-mile run on the beach. And all the girls were thrilled. But for me, on my calves on the beach, I was like on the verge of tears at this idea that we were about to go run on the beach.
Terrible.
But because our whole, team was so excited, I was like, okay, I guess that's what we're going to do. Like, that's fine. I'll do it. But I think really just finding your voice, and especially at some of these like lower level D3 schools that don't have as much technology or might not still, where you don't have maybe an athletic trainer who's sticking up for you and saying, I really don't think she should be doing that. Finding that voice within yourself to say, this isn't me just like backing down from this challenge. Like, this is me taking care of myself, because sometimes it's hard to see past these 4 years of playing, maybe 5, whatever it is. But the things that I wish I would have told myself back then so that I could still move today, right? Like, those are so important.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I had a few stress fractures in college, and that just like made me hyper aware in professional life and real life now that I'm like not running professionally anymore. But like you said, I think there's a part that we're like totally like missing on this conversation. I would love to bring it up, is like access to healthcare. So that is such an important piece that like during it, right? I'm like, during college, I was like, okay, like my parents didn't have that great insurance. So like sometimes I would need to go outside and maybe get an MRI
Yes.
because I believed I had a stress fracture. If they don't believe you have a stress fracture, they're not going to pay for it and send you to, the UT doctors. So I
No.
had to like call my mom one time and be like, something is wrong. I need help. Like, how do I do this? Because I'm still like learning, I'm a college student, I'm 18 years old. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that was like a big turning point for me, and realizing like, oh my gosh, like this is a little bit more serious and scary than I think it is. But the more, like we've been talking about, just advocate for yourself, speak up for yourself, but also like include your primary doctor in conversations. Like, find a sports psychiatrist. Like, there's so many things that can happen with healthcare that maybe you and your parents are unaware of right now. Like, yes, the school has amazing resources. There's varying degrees with different divisions, of course, D1 to D3. And I mean, there's everything from ice bath to Normatec to STEM to heating packs. I mean, you could really get in the training room and go at it. But I think there's also a piece missing where just like your general health. I know there was a ton of girls who had eating disorders. There were a ton of girls on the team that experienced, like, I remember training with someone who had sickle cell. So her training was completely different and dictated by her own doctor, not the school's
Yeah.
doctor. So all these conversations and points that we're bringing up are just so you're aware of your health, you take charge of it, you're an advocate for it, but also that sometimes you might need outside help, like you might need help scheduling an appointment or understanding your insurance. And so I think that's just an important point to bring up.
It's huge. And I'm going to jump in there because when you become a collegiate athlete, you don't stop becoming a human being that needs a primary care doctor, right? So we skip from pediatrician to our athletic trainer for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm only bringing this up because it's been a very long time since I've been an athlete and my son is living it and he gets a sinus infection. I'll just go talk to my trainer. I'm like, no, you'll go to the student health center and you'll get a primary care appointment. Why? Why would I do that? Right. So it's interesting. There's this shift that you are owned by athletics, that they will care for all these different pieces of your body, your mind, your spirit, even down to colds, the flu. They don't have the ability to do that. They're not thinking about that piece of you. So it's really important that you continue to do that. And that families, parents, Kendra, I'm glad that you guys had the ability to do that. For when my son comes to me and I'm like, no, we need to just find a regular doctor, that support, and you can give that support to your teammates as well. But that's a super important call out, because there is data on primary care visits. How many times did you guys get just physicals by a doctor when you were a collegiate athlete? like never, right? You know, I mean, maybe if you have to go in for, you know, something that's specific, but never unless there's a problem or there's something you specifically needed, right? Not just to check in on your general health.
Yeah. I think on the other side of it too, Kim, right? Like we've talked a lot about like standing up for yourself when you don't feel well enough, but like my freshman year, I was doing like 2, 3 days, all this stuff, right? And the day before or 2 days before our first game, I was like not feeling very well, like had a little bit of an itchy throat, but had, you know, I've been doing 2-a-days for 2, 3 weeks now. And so I went into the doctor just to get like a strep test, and they asked me, they said, you know, have you ever had mono? And I was like, I don't think so, but mono shows up like forever, right? Like once you test positive for mono, you're always going to test positive for mono. And so they tested me for mono and they were like, oh, you have mono. You can't play for the next like 2 months. Right. And I was like, I do. I feel fine. Like I have an itchy throat, but like my energy is not like mono low. Right. Like I just don't feel okay. And so I know I made the athletic department very ticked off, but I went home and I went to Knoxville and I went to my primary care doctor and I was like, is this inflamed? Is this swollen? Like, what's going on? Is it going to be a risk if a ball hits me? Like, am I actually injuring myself right now? What's the deal? And just getting that second opinion was so huge and important for me that I was able to show up and play in my first game because I was fine. And I'm sure I had mono like years before that. But yeah, but advocating for yourself on both sides of it too, right? Like
No,
not
you're
just
right.
dipping out, but opting in.
And one thing that we do at OnRise that we really believe in is there isn't a health system that's aligned for athletes currently. Like it's just not aligned for the health of the athlete. So you bring up a really good point of like, you know, you've got to, if you're a primary care doctor, you also have to understand the needs and constraints of the athlete. And you don't need to make like, okay, you're showing up positive for mono that's my rigid rule, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we dig in a little deeper and really see if this is something that Tasha needs to be out for 2 months of her first 2 months of collegiate competition. No one's going to ever want to come back to the doctor if that's how you practice, right? So it forces people further underground. I bet you didn't go back to the doctor very often after that.
Not the wellness center.
No.
Yeah, I think, Kim, you bring up a good point though, as far as creating experience for athletes to then create that self-trust, right? Like if every time we bring something up to a athletic trainer who's probably like, no, you're fine, throw a Band-Aid on it and it's a stress fracture, or you go to the health center on your campus and like, you need about 2 months, you're like, I know about that. So it creates in this relationship when we start to not trust ourselves because the professionals who are deemed the professionals are telling us elsewise. And then how can we advocate for ourselves if we're always put in question about how we feel? So I think learning and taking time, like what's been helpful for me, rest allows myself and my mind and my body to get still, to like get quiet, to pay attention, to tune in. Like, okay, what is my baseline? What is tired? What is overtrained? What is exhausted? What is sore? What is pain or discomfort? What is injured? And creating these moments and pockets throughout your day, throughout your training, throughout your week that you can kind of like do, I mean, maybe not a literal body scan, but just tune in with yourself and see where you're at, what you need, and then you can deploy the resources either or ask someone for help in order to move forward. And for me, it's been really empowering just taking those moments where like, okay, this feels new, especially someone coming from playing professional volleyball, getting into endurance running, like the whole world of this feels weird has been like, oh my gosh, I think I tore something. Like, no, I'm just sore because I'm running like 50 miles a week. Like, this is just new. Like, it's a different experience.
It's new.
That's so true.
But if I was just to go, like I was when I was in my 20s, there's no way I would be able to adapt to the new stresses on my body, but then two, understand what's happening and who to reach out to for help.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point on communication too, Kayla, right? Like it's so important to communicate. And like if any coaches listen to this too, bringing that atmosphere of communication to your team is so important. I heard a really good example from an athlete recently of them going to their coach and saying, I'm feeling really tired. I'm not sure if I should play in this game tomorrow, but then finding out, oh, actually it's a scrimmage and we can sub as many times as we need. Okay, I'd feel okay playing in that. And he might have been fine, right? Playing. But at the same time, it was anxiety reducing for him to know, oh, I could get subbed out and not feel like I can't ask for that and that kind of stuff. So I think the communication is absolutely key. And coaches, if you can open that door for communication. It's so important. But just to cap us off before we all go, like number one practical tip on sleep, maybe it's like in college practical sleep and recovery, like what would be your number one tip?
I would have to say, set the mood. I think there are ways to kind of wind down. And for athletes, it's like we have so many things on our mind. We're doing so many things. And like everyone has said, we just have like a small time to really focus on what we're doing and having alone time and winding down and finally going to bed. So for me, particularly, I found it when I was a pro was a really good routine where I would do the Normatec. I would have dinner, then do the Normatec, and then I would stretch, maybe do some yoga. I would read, maybe like go over my goals. And then I would literally put my phone down and just like lay in bed. And I would try my best to just think about the next day, maybe practice my goals for the next day. And that would be like my routine. So I would make sure all the lights were off, make sure it was like really cold, set the mood, make sure you're in the mood for sleep. And yeah, for me, it worked as a pro. And as I started to like hone in on that at home, I traveled a ton. I would spend like weeks and weeks in Europe, which is like there is no AC. So I would have to like do other things to make it work. But if you get it right at home, you can take it anywhere. So I was able to do like yoga in my hotel room, turn off the lights and just it's on repeat. So now I just don't have to think about it. Like I'm going into competition, I'm in Europe somewhere and I'm ready to go. I turn off the lights and I have my routine, have my Normatec, do my reading, and it's just like on repeat. So I think setting the mood and finding that routine for me would be my tip.
Awesome. Kayla?
I think I can piggyback right off of that because mine is the exact same as far as having a good wind down routine. But I think thinking even further than that is like create a sleep sanctuary, a place that you look forward going to at night. I have a different pillowcase that I use, like some satin pillowcases from Amazon, like something like this that feels nice, some good sheets. I have my essential oils. I have my sound machine that I listen to, and very similar to Kendra, that travels with me anywhere I go. I travel with a different pillowcase. I bring my essential oils and I have like my sleep time frequency ready. That way, no matter where I am, I know when those things come together, we're dropping into sleep and it's time to just go to bed.
I love that.
And those things aren't hard to throw in your bag, right? The sleep machine, an extra pillowcase, and that's so comforting. The huge fuzz buzz blanket that sometimes doesn't fit in my bag, that's actually a really good idea. I think I'm going to just bring the pillowcase, and that makes you.
I will say, just make sure the pillowcase is a different color. That way, when you leave wherever you're staying, you remember to grab it. So mine is like lime green. So yeah.
The things you learn.
Mine is extremely practical for college. I stayed in a dorm all 4 years, which is, I know, wild. The mattress topper, when it slides on that bed at night, is miserable. Duct tape, corners, just around the corner, duct tape, all 4 corners. That thing doesn't move. Change the game for my college sleeping. So that would be my tip. Also scheduling your stress the previous day so that when you go to sleep, you're not worried about your 6 a.m. workout and missing that alarm. That would be my tip. But
great tip.
Kim, you want to close us out?
Yeah, no, you guys have done a great job. Mina, we appreciate the time to be able to come and help with Athlete Mental Health Week for Athletes for Hope. We are thrilled to tune into all the other different programming that's around. So thank you. If there's any questions or anything else you guys would like to talk about, feel free. And otherwise we will sign off.